Hello, everyone. My name is Andrew Noack, and I serve on the Lambertville Community Advisory Team. I'd like to welcome you to another in our series of question and answers with Mayor Julia Fahl. Mayor Fahl, thanks for being here and welcome yourself.
I'm so excited to answer a couple more questions here and talk to everybody right before the Thanksgiving holiday.
Great. Well, let's dig in. My first question is, how are you?
I'm doing okay. I'm really bummed. Usually I have about 25, 30 people over for Thanksgiving, and this year it's just me and my wife. So going into the holiday a little subdued, but hoping everybody stays safe and healthy.
Right. Good. Well, I hope you have a good day.
I will.
All right, moving on to the matter at hand. We're going to talk a little bit about the Closson site this afternoon. So both the City Council and the CAT have heard from residents who are concerned about development in Lambertville. In fact, we've heard a lot of it. As the city considers the potential purchase and preservation of the Closson farm, will you explain the current zoning on the site? I myself have heard that anywhere from 10 to 48 residential units could be built there. If a private developer purchased the site instead of the city, exactly how many housing units could be built there?
This is a great question, and I agree. I've heard a lot from the community that a primary goal of the community is to make sure that Lambertville doesn't overdevelop, and so that's why this is one of the many reasons this is a really exciting opportunity for us. So the underlying zoning on that site is about 11 to 12 units, but if a private developer purchased that site, we feel very confident that they would likely come in for a pretty significant bulk variance. It's important to remember that the property that is now Lambert's Hill was once also Closson property, and that it had similar underlying zoning, and that there was just a series of public hearings with the Planning and Zoning Board that ultimately went to some pretty contentious lawsuits to get to the number of units that currently exist in Lambert's Hill now. So there's no guarantee if this is acquired by a private organization, what their request would be or how many units would ultimately be put on that site.
Okay, well, thanks for clarifying that. And I know you've touched on this before, but I'd like you to, again, spend a couple of moments just explaining some of the reasons why the city is considering purchasing the property.
Certainly. I would say the first and foremost, most important part of this is that this is a really important preservation project for the city. This is sort of a once in a generation opportunity for us to ensure that Lambertville maintains its rural and historic character. That is one of the reasons that a lot of us moved here. Once this site is sold, if it's sold to a non-governmental entity, the likelihood that it would look the same as it looks now is very low. So ultimately, this is an opportunity first and foremost for preservation. We also know that there's a really important historic home on that site, the historic Holcomb House, or Washington's headquarters. And this is an opportunity for us to not only preserve that site as it stands now, which is has the historic facade of that building, but also to make sure that that site could potentially be open for public use. And that's really important to us as well, because we know that historic preservation is a major economic driver for the city of Lambertville. Now, we're looking at other potential options of ways to use this property for passive recreation, things like community gardens, dog parks, trying to find a suitable provider for the farm market. And we're also studying whether or not it's a good fit for the police station. But we've got a lot of work ahead of us before we answer those questions. What we know now is that this preservation project shouldn't be one that we sleep on. We need to make sure that we preserve this property and stop it from overdevelopment.
Great, thanks for that. And I'm going to step out of my cat role for just a second to say that as a parent who spent many snowy mornings at the base of Cow Hill watching my three boys sled, I can't overestimate the value of the community spirit that the Clossons have in letting people sort of sled, in the shadow of Washington's headquarters. It's just been fantastic to watch my kids go screaming down the hill and hit, all these air bumps. So I think that's been a great benefit to the city as well.
Well, and that brings up a final point I'd like to make here, which is this is also an opportunity for us to honor the Closson's legacy as a part of our community. I'm sure many folks know here that the Closson's property, beyond the property that over 8 acres that we're talking about now, also includes an easement that our school property is on, that Ely Field is on. The Clossons have given so much to this community and ensured, that what we're doing now, which is trying to preserve that historic rural character, they were really on the forefront of that before any of us were. And so this is not only a good way to ensure that we can continue to have Cow Hill and make sure that this is available to the public in the community, but also to honor a family that's done a lot for our small town.
Thanks. So pivoting just a little bit, in the past, when the cities purchased private land for preservation or public use, were these purchases put to a vote through a public referendum? And if not, why? Why not?
Yeah, so that's really interesting, actually. And somebody brought that to my attention last night, and I did a little bit of research. So the city actually did put the purchase of the Cherry Street lot up for public referendum, which I was not aware of until very recently. And that was after a series of planning board uh, applications to build housing on that lot. There was a lot of pushback, not only because of the rainwater issues with that particular development, but also because people saw the potential for that to become available open community space. And so it was put on referendum. Now that's a choice that a governing body has to make, based on based on the decisions that where they feel like they really need community input. If this were a wildly controversial decision, potentially the governing body could opt to put this on as a public question. But the governing body has the power to acquire property in the city of Lambertville, and we feel like it would be a huge detriment to the community to wait until a public question, which wouldn't be until June of next year, to sort of organize a referendum, versus acquiring the exclusivity on this property now, doing the studies that we need to do without the fear that this property's on the open market. If we sort of wait and for this referendum, this property could be sold to a secondary, commercial owner, and we're back to seeing that hill potentially developed into residential housing, which I don't think anybody wants. We know we've gotten really positive support from the governing body side of folks, coming out of the woodwork to thank us for our work on this, and we've got a long way to go in terms of the public process. So our November 30th meeting, where we're discussing the approval for potential acquisition of that property, is really just the first phase of a 4-phase process where we'll be engaging the community, using the community advisory team to really make sure that we've vetted out all of the potential concerns, as well as doing our due diligence on that particular property, and making a decision as a governing body. But we want to make sure that the community is with us every step of the way. I'm just not sure that referendum is the right vehicle to be doing that.
Well, thanks for the clarification. I know it's been a question that's come up recently in several different forums. So thanks for clarifying that. So can you, and we're going to end up talking a lot about the financials in the weeks and the months ahead, and you're going to be asked these questions, I think, time and time again. And you've already put out a lot of information, and the CAT appreciates that, and I'm sure a lot of the residents do as well. But we just wanted to ask you again a couple of questions. Can you tell us more about how the project will be paid for? Specifically, will the proposed $2.9 million purchase of the Closson farm increase our taxes? Will it require issuance of new bonds or incur more debt to develop the site?
Great. This is a really great question. So first of all, let's just clarify here that we've negotiated a price with the Clossons, and it's not $2.9 million. I know I've seen that sort of flying around from unreliable sources, and it's important to make sure that we're triple checking our sources here. So on November 30th, when we introduce, we're still negotiating our final contract, and the sort of various out clauses that we can talk about a little bit later in this interview. But just once again, a lot of misinformation flying around about the total cost. The way that we're going to finance this is actually really interesting. Several years ago, the community actually did hold a referendum and said that they wanted to see a 2% tax on so for open space. That was later reduced to 1%. We have the open space tax that's sort of already taken out of your taxes every year. We're going to use that open space tax money for exactly what it was intended for, which is to acquire open space, which is what the Closson site is. So we're going to use that open space tax as a down payment, both on the property and on the eventual bond. And then we're going to take the studies, all of the due diligence studies that are going to be required in order to make this property work, if we can move forward on acquisition, as well as the total cost of acquisition and any potential construction or sort of rehabilitation we would need to do to make that site really usable for the public. All of that will be incurred in a bond sometime in either between late March and early May. That so the down payment for both the bond and the property will be paid for out of open space tax, and then long term will be sort of financing that over 25 years. And the reason that we do that is because this has a really long life period, right? There's no need to put this burden taxpayers with this decision now. We can amortize those costs over time and ensure that it's at a really reduced rate. So while we have direct, we've already sort of figured out a long-term 30-year plan for what this is going to cost the taxpayers. And this is really just a reallocation of about 62 cents of the tax dollars you already pay. There'll be no new taxes as a part of this plan. And we've also taken into consideration responsible borrowing practices. Other major capital projects will need to take into effect. And even with all of that borrowing that we'll need to do over the next 30 years in order to maintain our streets, maintain our public works vehicles, maintain our facilities, we will still be able to keep this as a tax neutral project.
That's terrific. That's
not bad.
Yeah, not bad at all. Thanks. It's a lot of information, but good information. So the last question I have is really, I think, a kind of a two-part question. So a vote authorizing you as the mayor to sign the contract to acquire the Closson property is expected at the November 30 City Council meeting, along with a vote on a bond ordinance so that the city can proceed with its due diligence. Can you just talk a little bit about that? I mean, the process and...
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. So here's what we know. The Closson property, as I've said already in this video, the Closson property is up in the open market. If we don't act quickly and sort of maintain exclusivity of this site, the likelihood that the Clossons will find another buyer is pretty high. It's a very fairly priced piece of property, and it's a really unique property. And we know that they've already gotten interest from other non-government entities. So the governing body has made the decision to work quickly and aggressively towards exclusivity, which means that we would sign a contract. When that contract is finalized with the Clossons, the action taken in the governing body meeting allows me as the mayor to sign that contract. That contract is going to lay out a timeline because we've got a lot of due diligence to do on our side. We have environmental studies. We've got civil engineers or civic engineers. We've got architects. We have, city planners that we have to appoint to study this process. We've got lots of tests that we need to do. We've got to really flesh out what the total cost of any rehabilitation work we would need to do on that property, like on the driveway, et cetera, et cetera. And we're going to put that all together and present it to the community as we go. Right. So this is going to be an ongoing conversation. If at any point during that due diligence period, something is flagged for the community or for the governing body that says, now, wait a second, this is no longer a worthwhile project, we will then cancel the contract and not move forward on acquiring the property. And so we are really diligently planning on working with not only the community advisory team, but every member of the community that wants to get involved in this, to make sure that as we are receiving information in these studies, we're pushing that out to the public so that we can make the best possible choice for our community. But like I said, the most important thing is making sure that in an effort to stop overdevelopment, we don't allow this to stay on the market for very much longer.
Terrific. Well, you've answered kind of my second question in that question about, the process and whether we have various sort of jumping out points if there's a question about, or if there's a concern about diligence or widespread public, uh, you know,
Absolutely. I mean, this is just the beginning, right? We want to continue to hear from the community. And, I hear folks loud and clearly when they say we want a referendum. What they're saying is we want a chance to air our concern and air our voices. And I want to give, our governing body wants to give, and our community advisory team wants to give every single member of our community the opportunity to make their voices heard on this. We've got another 6 months of this. This is just the beginning steps to ensure that this really important and valuable cultural piece of property in the community isn't swept up by somebody who wants to turn it into townhouses.
Well, thank you for those answers. And if I may, I just would like to build on that a little bit in terms of the community advisory team. Just like to remind people, residents, and the public that we are absolutely 100% available through our email address, which is catchairs@lambertvillenj.org. We'd love to hear from you. Additionally, you can find 6 months worth of CAT work, as well as our most recent updates on our webpage, which is lambertvillenj.org/cat. So feel free to go in and kind of peruse the information. There's a lot there, including these question and answer sessions with you. And also just remind people that the CAT is here to listen, and we are here to work with the community. We're here to listen to your ideas and concerns. We're here to answer questions. We're here to offer clarifications when necessary. And ultimately, based on all of those conversations, we come back to the City Council with some thoughts and possible recommendations based on a lot of community engagement, public engagement, and a lot of knowledge that we build along the way. We're super excited to be here. We're very dedicated. We're willing to work really hard, and we can't effectively kind of achieve our mission unless we have widespread constructive community engagement. So we just want to remind everybody that we're here and we're ready to talk, we're ready to engage. So please reach out to the CAT when you can. And again, thanks again, Mayor.
Well, and Andrew, I want to thank you and every member of the CAT. I know that the last 6 months has seen over 800 hours of community engagement, not on just this issue, but across the board, as we've been working on some really tough, complicated issues with the community. And I want to thank you and every single one of your colleagues who's volunteered their time to do that.
Well, thanks. It's not easy for me to speak for a group, but I would say that I think in my experience on the CAT, there's a lot of people that embody that same sort of community spirit that would allow children to sled down a hill, on your property. So, we're here to work hard and have fun and be part of the community and just to do what we can because we love the town.
Awesome. Well, Andrew, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. I appreciate it as well. Bye-bye.
Bye.